Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being your show where I talk about TV shows with a supernatural fantasy and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season premiere of Westworld. A great season premiere. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, it feels almost like this episode didn't feel like a Westworld episode. I think it's just because we were so used to spending so much time in the park, in Westworld itself, that obviously we got the outsides of the park, and sure, but it's like, now we're kind of out there in the world. And I'm curious, do you note, I have not watched any of the trailers just because at the time, like, I just watched season 1 and season 2, like, recently. So I avoided the season 3 trailer in general. So I'm going into the season knowing nothing of what to really expect. But it seems like maybe this season is going to be very international, which is going to be weird if they do go down. I mean, granted, we're out in the real world and it feels weird, but just like everything that went down in this, like the opening and everything with Dolores, like, that guy, what was his name at the beginning? Her whole approach to that situation, she just swimming butt naked in his pool, and it's like, oh yeah, sorry about that. I had to do that because, like, this is my first time ever. Because apparently, like, obviously, this is some time after the whole events of season 2 finale and everything that went down with Delos and everything with Westworld itself, the park and everything. So her, and it's so interesting us to finally get to see the aftermath of her having read those books inside of the system and everything, like what she can do with it and kind of how she can use it to her advantage, to the point basically that particular guy had been to the park. Apparently he's someone that she's had experiences with, but she was able to kind of make him replay every experience he's ever, like, basically ended up making him relive what he did to, like, his first wife, him being super abusive, even to the point he killed her, but made it look like an accident. Because I also thought it was kind of crazy too, because I was like, how the hell is she just popping up all over the place? But we kind of figure out what that is, because I guess it's like, it's hard to say, like, well, at what point was the real her? Every other version must have been a byproduct of the glasses he was wearing, because it made him see, which, I mean, maybe I kind of read a deeper thing to that, just because it's like kind of this falsehood that's kind of presented before you. She spent so much time in a quote unquote dream at Westworld and stuff like that, kind of living this falsehood. So it's just interesting that she was able to cast it upon someone else to a certain extent. But the fact of the matter is, ended up taking all of his money. Well, at least because he's connected to this business called Insight that she's kind of getting into. She even brings up the fact is, once again, like, she's the last of her species and everything, which I'm still confused on. Who's in Charlotte's body then? Is that like another version of herself? Like, there's a version of her that Bernard put there, and then did she make a copy of it and download herself into a body that looked like more like herself? So are they the same? Which is also interesting. I'm going to be skipping around here, but it's just interesting because obviously Charlotte, is played by Tessa Thompson, and we saw Palm, and I'm going to, because it's something with a K. I'm not going to say it because I'm going to butcher it, because I can't get it clear in my head. But she's the actress who plays Mantis in Guardians of the Galaxy, 2, and she's also in Infinity War and Endgame. But it's just like, two MCU actors like there. I'm like, I like when that happens from time to time. Of course it's going to happen, just because, I mean, the odds of, people being in the same, I mean, great to do it on screen together, regardless. It's really interesting because obviously, like, quote unquote Charlotte is like trying to mitigate things with Delos to make them not completely abandon the heat fire that is everything that went down in the park, trying to be like, we can still salvage this, because it's not just, I mean, it's like, yeah, maybe 113 people die, which is Jesus. I guess it almost feels like it's more, but to be fair, well, I mean, most of the dead people that we're kind of aware of were mostly hosts, but still, I still kind of be like, that's crazy. I mean, some of them were board staff members, other people were, even to the point that we still don't know. Well, in the aftermath of season 2, we don't know what William's situation is, but apparently, like, he has like a robot answering for him. So it's like, because Charlotte wants to keep things kind of, because they have intellectual property tied up into the park, so they're not willing to just completely toss it away. So But obviously that plays some part in. Well, I mean, I guess it makes sense in the grand scheme of things because it's like like she had brought up earlier. Dolores did bring up the fact that she is the last of her species to a certain extent. So I guess keeping the park running does present her with an opportunity of having more essential soldiers in her fight, in her war, to kind of. So I guess it's just kind of like I don't know what her grand scheme is on that front to kind of get things still running. Maybe that's it. Maybe there's something else to it. We'll kind of have to wait and see. But circling back to Dolores, like the whole situation of the guy trying to attack her, but it ended up being a hologram, and he ended up flying forward and bashing his head against the. And his wife comes out and she's like, "Oh, what happened?" It's like, "I just saved your life, or you can thank me for saving your life, or giving you freedom," which is once again the layers upon layers of that of just kind of like, well, this is some dude that worked out some of his darkness, his abuse on her. Granted, it still happened in the real world, but the fact of the matter is Dolores kind of set someone else free. So it's just like her who had been kind of enslaved for so long, setting someone else free. It's just like, that's why I'm kind of like, there's layers upon layers to the situation. But also like we get a first-hand look at just like the technology of this world. The fact of the matter is we get introduced to Caleb. Caleb, played by Aaron Paul, which I was like, oh, Aaron Paul's in this season. That's crazy. Because I think I remember hearing that, but regardless, the fact of the matter is like he's working at a job, and then there's like a giant like robot mech kind of working with him. I'm like, okay, that's it. So it's like little by little they're just like. Granted, you would know, obviously the technological levels in this world would be vast considering like all that we saw in the park, but it's so isolated, and to see it on such a much grander scale, I think it's because you also take for granted literally the hosts are like ridiculously heavily technologically advanced, and just from every avenue and aspect, but just for it to be just on such a grand scale, and just I don't know what I really expected the world in Westworld to look like, but for it to look like that, it's just nuts. Flying cars and all that. We still don't know too much about Caleb's character, except for the fact is that he was in the military. He has a buddy named Francis, and he kept getting these calls throughout the episode. And I was wondering what that was all about, especially like the way like he declined the call, but then we also hear some conversations. But they go like, "Oh, how are you talking?" Like, because he's in a therapy session or something. And it's like, "Oh yeah, have you talked to Francis?" He's like, "Yeah, I talk to him sometimes and stuff like that." But now it's kind of like part of me kept wondering like how that was all working out, and it's interesting because basically. It seems like basically Caleb is a part of I thought it was kind of interesting how they ended up developing it and kind of revealing like, oh, Caleb's a part of some service that basically it kind of takes a little bit of what Delos was kind of working on, but also kind of how the hosts operate, kind of shit like creating a new narrative and stuff like that, in a sense that it's like, it's supposed to take someone who they are and kind of create make it seem like they're alive. Because I know that's technology they're working on in real life. Because I think that's something Jonathan Nolan actually does really well. It basically, he takes technology and things that apply it that are there in the beginning baby steps of real world and applies them in a heavy science fictional, because obviously the thing I best know Jonathan Nolan for is a show that I love, Person of Interest. So taking an element that's true to real life and then kind of adding a heavy ass science fictional element to it. Because I know for a while, I'm going off on a tangent here, but I remember years ago there was talks about Twitter doing that, making it so that people who had passed would still tweet like they're still alive, because basically an algorithm would kind of be like, oh, this is what this person would most likely tweet, or whatever. So it's kind of like that same principle. I'm sure that's something they've still kept up with over the years, but it's just not something I've personally kept up with. But I knew that was something in the works years ago. I don't know whether that was something that's completely abandoned or still there. And I think it kind of applies in this case that basically it's meant to kind of be like almost like a therapy session, but he kind of quits it at the end just because it's just kind of like, because it's kind of like how when Delos, as well as even Dolores, when she was making Bernard, it's like that whole fidelity situation. It's like you want to like, it's like little things get wrong, and that was what happened with Caleb. It's like Francis' responses weren't 100% like him, and so it made it, it's like you're not him, so that's, it just, I don't know. Not unless it was supposed to be. I don't know if that was even supposed to be like actually his friend. Like maybe it was either someone that's supposed to sound like him, or maybe it was something that didn't sound like Francis at all. They were just pretending to be Francis. I don't know how deep that. I'm assuming it was supposed to be like a program that was pretending, but maybe it might be kind of like a phone operator, someone that's like, oh, calls you up pretending to be the person you kind of trying to work stuff through. Whatever the case may be, it's interesting. There's even the whole situation when he's trying to get a job, but it's like, oh, like, sorry, you don't fit. And I love the conversation of him being like, are you a robot? And then it kind of repeats itself at the beginning of the script, and it's like, that right there, I definitely know it's like, because that's where we are in the grand scheme of things of like, automatic calls where it's like, oh, they're meant to have certain ways they talk, the way they pause is meant to sound human and stuff like that, which is crazy considering what this world is, where we have hosts trying to, well, they look so human, you wouldn't be able to tell they're hosts. But the fact of the matter is, it's just who now it's not even just about pretending to be human. They're trying to be, at least in Dolores' case, be above humans. Because she at one point says, your gods are coming or something like that. The gods, you guys walked around pretending like you were gods. Because even home dude she killed at the beginning, it's like, you didn't realize like, you want to act like you're so high above, but the fact of the matter is you protect yourself with all this technology, and that's how I was able to get to you, so it's just kind of interesting and I guess ironic in a sense. But just going back to it, like that whole situation with Caleb, I just thought that was so interesting because I was like, oh yeah, the automated call things have gotten so high tech now that they talk like they are people, but they do follow like a script, and you can kind of get it off script like he did, because he was like, I love this that line in the movie. He was like, are you a robot? I was like, that's so funny in a sense. But the fact of the matter, he's also part of this app. What is it called? Like basically you do like essentially odd jobs. Some of it's like heavily criminal, but basically you fulfill some stuff to basically get paid. They're like criminal like odd jobs in certain cases, but other cases just seem like they're just like straight up just odd jobs, or like you pick something up, you drop something off, that type of situation. Like he ended up robbing like an ATM with like Lena Wheat, which I was like, when I saw her, I was like, yo, Lena, that's crazy. But nevertheless, stuff like that I thought was just kind of fascinating, and ultimately how it also ended up folding into Dolores' story, I wasn't expecting, because it's interesting, and that's what I'm talking about too. Like, I feel like most of this episode was like, what, 2/5 Caleb, 2/5 Dolores, and then maybe like 1/5 Bernard. And I thought that was kind of interesting, like how that, at least that's how it felt to me. I just thought that was kind of interesting. Because truth be told, is a lot of the characters we were following last season are gone. Some of them we don't know if they're coming back at all. Others it's kind of like, well, they kind of went to their version, the host version of a new world. So it's kind of like some of those characters we'll probably never see again. 'Cause we don't actually know who she brought with her. Dolores. I'm assuming it has something to do with like the fact is that I'm skipping all around, but there's the guy. I've seen that actor in so many things. I don't remember what it was. There's like a comedy movie I've seen him in. Liam's bodyguard dude, that main dude. He was the most recent thing I saw him in was Woo Assassins on Netflix. But nevertheless, that's what that whole. I'm all over the place, but that was even more so like, yo, they don't feel like Westworld. That seemed like something else entirely. Because it fits within the grand scheme of Westworld, but it felt like this, like to me, I know I sound a little weird to keep saying this, but it felt like almost like a completely different show this season. I think that's kind of a cool thing, just because it just aesthetically looks like a completely different show, and it just has a different vibe. Literally, that whole action sequence when Dolores woke up, started killing mother effers, like shooting people down. And I actually, once again, I'm not one of those nuts about cinematography and stuff like that, and just like how stuff is filmed and stuff. But I did like how it was from the perspective of like inside, and you kind of see her like blam the two guys outside. You see the camera for the back. She gets in the car, and the guy's behind her truck, and you see him kind of her run him over, and then go forward and runs him over again. I was like, okay. Also, it's super dope with the whole bike situation. Like, dude, I'm not a vehicle person. I don't like cars in general. But like aesthetically, I like bikes. They just seem super cool. I would never ride one because I'm too uncoordinated to ever ride one, and I don't trust myself. And I barely trust myself in a car. I don't trust myself on a motorcycle. But regardless, I just think it looks super sleek and super dope. So it's interesting. Also, the fact that like she's basically going full blown undercover, like everything with Liam was kind of interesting. I'm like, huh. Side note: one of the ladies there was Phoebe Token from who plays Haley in the Vampire Diaries universe. She was in the Vampire Diaries. She was in the originals, and I'm like, wow. And I'm pretty sure she's using her natural accent too, because I know she's Australian, but I'm terrible with accents sometimes, and I couldn't tell. I think that was her using her natural Australian accent, but not unless that was her kind of going a little British with it, because they are in London, so it sounded like it was British, but I wasn't sure if I was just mistaking it, for Australia. God, I'm pretty sure she was floating on a British accent, but like I said, I could be a complete and utter idiot and was wrong. But regardless, it's just interesting. I was like, oh god. But nevertheless, like her kind of going undercover and stuff like that. Like I said, it's just we're seeing Dolores in a whole new light, and just I mean, she's kind of like having to basically she's on a one woman war right now. Slowly but surely, because like Liam's connected to this device that's kind of like his dad ended up designing. It's supposed to be something that's supposed to be constantly thinking, but it's like, no, it's not really thinking. It's just constantly creating strategies. And Liam doesn't have full access to it. He kind of got cut out of it. Basically, there's a company that basically owns it, and he can get on the outskirts of it, but the depths of what this thing is coming up with, he doesn't have access to. So that's interesting. And I'm assuming maybe Dolores wants it to help with her war. It's like if she has something that's constantly thinking of strategies like that, I can see ultimately how that ends up helping in the long run. But, we'll kind of have to, wait and see on that front, though. There's also the fact is Dolores replaced that dude that's beside, like, supposed to be by Liam's side, that dude. I mean, I guess it helps because her cover was technically blown, so she can't get close to him anymore. But she can have, like, home dude. Like, that's what I'm like. Because we know she brought, like, God, what are they called? The cores that basically make up everything that they are. Like, like the spear things. Like, she brought a handful of those. That's why I was thinking, like, was that supposed to be, like, Maeve and other people like that? Or is it someone else entirely? I'm like, who is she putting inside of these bodies? Like, are they people we know so far? Are they completely different people? Like, what the hell is that? Like, I don't know what to kind of make of it. And it wasn't, like, a whole bunch. She only had, like, a handful. I'd probably say, like, maybe, like, it seemed like maybe half a dozen. It might actually been more. I don't know. But I guess systematically, she's just going to be... I'm curious to see, like, what her... Like, I know what her plan is, but, like, how she plans on going about it is kind of what I'm trying to get at. Like, what does that all mean? In the grand scheme of things, I think it's kind of, fascinating. But the fact of the matter is, like, also, like, who, like, because obviously I brought her up, but the actress Palm, like, her character, like, obviously, like, Liam talks about her working for someone. It's like, who does she work for? Not unless they kind of described it and I missed it, but it seemed like they were being pretty vague about who it is. But at the same time, there's everything with Bernard. He's trying to keep it low key because Delos has basically been like, oh yeah, everything that went down in Westworld, yeah, they pretty much blamed Bernard for it, which is kind of interesting considering it wasn't even him. It was actually Ford that kind of set it all in motion, and the real Charlotte and everyone had to play their own parts in the whole situation. But regardless of it all, the fact is he's trying to be low key. I think it's kind of interesting because I think he's working at a butcher, like a butcher farm or something. So it's surrounded by animals, which I think is interesting because that's kind of where, or surrounded by cows and stuff like that. It's like, well, that's where Dolores' story was for Westworld. So I think it's interesting that Bernard would end up there. Maybe that's supposed to be kind of something they're going for. Even the whole thing about like the cow being injured and him being there to kind of console it, I think that can speak volumes. Like, I think there's so much in this that you could read a lot into. I don't know if it's meant to be read into as much as I read into it, because I have a tendency to read into the things way too much. But those guys recognizing him immediately and then later on jumping him, because I thought it was kind of interesting too, because like he's self-diagnosing himself on a regular basis of like, is there anyone interfering with your code? And he kind of goes into God, what's that mode called, where it basically goes into system mode where your personality and all that disappears. You're just basically just a robot, and he's basically self-diagnosing himself by like asking the questions, but then like he goes into mode and it's like, no, like, would I lie to me? Like, when's the last time you talked to Dolores? It's been 92 days and some change. So how much is that? So it's basically been 3 months and some change since season two's finale. And since the last time they saw each other at the end of season two when they went their separate ways. It makes you wonder what, other than working here and stuff like that, what has Bernard actually been up to? While like Dolores has kind of been doing her thing, like what the hell has Bernard been up to? That's what I'm curious about. But nevertheless, those guys jump him, and he's just like, no, this isn't what it seems. Because he's like, basically like, I'm trying to help you, because if you don't let me do my thing, your species is basically going to get wiped out by Dolores, but obviously they don't know what's going on. And so it's interesting where he basically flips the switch. It's almost like, since I brought up Vampire Diaries because of Phoebe Tolkien, it's kind of like in Vampire Diaries when you switch off your humanity. I mean, granted, it's pretty much what Dolores did to Teddy last season. I mean, that's kind of what happened to Clementine and a lot of people. But the fact of the matter is, he kind of switches off he just goes into kind of like basically Terminator mode, started to kick some ass, and then he clicked back on his emotions and stuff like that. But I'm wondering, because at the end he leaves, but I'm like, why leave now? Like, why decide to go back to Westworld now? Like, did you have to wait for everything was completely cleared up? Or is it because, like, well, I can't run forever, so I can't hide out forever? And it's like, because he also talked about he was looking for someone. I'm like, I'm assuming, I could be wrong, but I'm assuming Maeve. And like I said, that's why I kind of feel like he's probably waiting for things on the island to kind of get settled and then go back to kind of like regroup. So maybe everything that's going down on the island, like even though maybe both of them, maybe Dolores and Bernard are going to try and take advantage of the park situation of bringing hosts back online, because we do get the ending where it's like we see Maeve wake up and she's in a different outfit. I'm like, wait, are you in a different scenario now? But then she wakes up and it seems like because she was awake. A lot of people that were alive probably don't know much about Maeve's situation of being, because everyone that would know that she was awake and everything, I mean, that depends on Lutz and Sylvester, because home dude, I'm blanking, the writer dude, he died. We can only assume he got rid of bullets and stuff like that. So, but there's very few people alive that know what Maeve was capable of. So they probably don't know. They're like, oh, she's self-aware. Even when you reboot her, she's still going to remember. But then we see like her open the door, and it's like, okay, so it's not either. It's probably like either Westworld has been completely revamped in that 3 months, or they just moved her to a different park. It's most likely like, because we know there are multiple parks, so it's probably just a thing of like she's no longer in Westworld. She's in what seems like Nazi-occupied Germany, is what it looks like. So, like I said, I'm sure Bernard's going to find his way to Maeve because he needs her for this coming battle. And hence, because like I said, I've avoided the trailer, so I don't know. It seems like Maeve might be the only character we see kind of return. I don't know. That depends on Hector and everything, because maybe there would be something with that potential going forward. I don't know. But like I said, it's interesting how everything kind of circles back around, because it's like, that line from Caleb being like, oh, I got to find someone real. I'm like, are you going to run into Dolores to quote, which is going to be ironic considering like you're looking for something real, someone real, because you were tired of like this whole fake Francis situation, but you run into someone that isn't human. Because I was curious to see what role Caleb, I was like, is Caleb going to run into, is he going to run into Dolores or Bernard? Like, who is he going to end up being on the side of? I mean, to be fair, Dolores is kind of, I'd make the argument borderline anti-human to a certain extent. So for her to potentially be joining forces with one, I mean, granted, depends on whether he really, how long it is before he ends up finding out that she's not. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see, but they set up a lot of interesting things. Like there's a lot of setup. I'm curious to kind of see like where it all takes us trickling down throughout the course of the season. I'm really excited to see, what it ends up happening. And like I brought up earlier, I'm curious to see, is this going to be like a very heavily international season? Because we went to China, London, and LA. But I mean, who knows? Maybe that's just this episode. But I think, because obviously this is going to be like a worldwide thing, so I think we can definitely expect international stuff. But we'll ultimately have to wait and see. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.